Okay, it's time for us to talk relationships, and to do justice to that is Amaka Chika-Mbonu. She is a motivational speaker and a certified counselor with special interest in couple counseling. She has joined us today to talk about maturity and how it affects relationships. Always a pleasure to have you in the studio.
Lovely to be here.
Thank you so much. Okay, so when we talk about maturity, there's always that thing about people wanting to say, okay, maturity is this, maturity is that. So I'm just going to let you, as the expert, tell us what maturity actually is.
Well, I'm going to talk about maturity in relation to marriage and relationships. And it will be having come of full age, and so being able to make logical and rational decisions in your relationship in the context of a relationship, of a romantic relationship. That's what it would be. You know, and it's not always necessarily a function of age. So to come into full maturity for marriage, which is supposed to be a permanent relationship, you need to be mature. It's not for sissies.
It's definitely not for sissies. Now let's talk about maturity. Now, what defines maturity in a relationship? Like, what are those traits you need to have before you can say, I'm mature and I'm in a relationship?
Okay, one of the first things is you need to know yourself. You know, you need to have come to the point where you actually know who you are, what you want, what you like, and what you absolutely don't like. And then have the ability, as I always say, to communicate it to somebody else. You also have to have had the ability to the emotional intelligence to interact with another person, giving room for their weaknesses and your weaknesses and playing on your strengths. All this will be the dynamic that will come into play to show that you're mature enough for a relationship. And also the ability to have staying power. I know a lot is said about, you know, it's not how long you can suffer. But on the other hand, too, it's not, the maturity will dictate that you are able to withstand certain things that may come your way.
Indeed. Now, there's something you mentioned which caught my attention. First, you mentioned the fact that when you're in a relationship, especially when it comes to maturity, EI is important.
Yes.
However, EI, in most cases, especially in this part of the world, does seem to be a way to take advantage of situations. So, say, for example, as a female, the culture, in quotes, requires you to be more emotionally intelligent. And so you are expected to, in quotes, manage situations better, monitor your husband's moods, for example, before tabling a matter and all. However, at what point does it go from EI to abuse?
Well, I absolutely don't even agree completely with that fact, that the woman is the one who is supposed to manage her emotions and sort of pamper to the needs of her husband. It's kind of a situation of it's not this or that, it's kind of this and that. To some degree, each person in the relationship should do that. And just because something is cultural doesn't make it right. So I actually stand against that. Yeah, it doesn't make it right. You know, some things, culture evolves even, and as we learn better, then we do better. So I don't even agree with that. It should be a mutual situation where both people are mature, both people are managing each other's moods and, you know, looking out for the other person, managing their weaknesses to a degree and helping them get better and then bringing both strengths into the relationship. So I actually don't agree with that. I feel that culture sometimes even draws us back. Culture is good, but we have to be careful with culture.
So in the case of emotional intelligence, how then do you really exhibit it?
I think it's in this place of knowing yourself. One, honestly, in terms of even maturity, you need to be mature enough to know that the kind of person you even agree to spend the rest of your life with is very important because it's going to play into the marriage.
Yes.
And so for emotional intelligence, I think, like I said, it's not just for the woman, it's for both parties to be emotionally intelligent. And I've kind of, I think, missed the trend of your question, but it's for both parties to be emotionally intelligent, not just for the woman to be that way. Relationship is 100-100, both people bringing two things together that then make the relationship work.
Now let's talk about staying power, because you also mentioned staying power. We are in a society and even in a world where many people will tell you that if it's not working, leave. And so when we talk about not working, we're talking about if it's getting abusive, if it's affecting you, especially your well-being, and all of that. But then how can you then measure staying power? Because staying power is supposed to be a case of till death do us part, through sickness and health,
yes,
sorrow
for better,
and
for worse.
joy, for better, for worse.
Yeah.
So when we talk about staying power, it's expected that you're supposed to stay through it all. But then how do you know when how can you be mature enough to know, okay, I have to draw the line here?
Well, one thing I'm going to say is that abuse of any kind, is just a no-no. There may be a need, and it's not a one-size-fits-all. It's difficult to answer it in the time we have. But abuse is a no-no. If there's abuse, there is going to be need, if not necessarily for a divorce immediately, for some kind of separation. So the person who is doing this tries to get help, and because some sicknesses lend themselves to treatment, some don't. So to see if that person can work it out.
Some people don't want to seek help.
Some people don't want to seek help.
Yeah.
So these are all the things that will come into consideration. So, in that case, there is a need for some kind of a separation. And even with infidelity, in some cases, there may be a need to, cause some kind of separation and then see what happens next. But when you talk about how do you know about staying power, my answer to that would be, you see, marriage shouldn't be entered into frivolously. And it should also not be left precipitately.
Yes.
It's difficult to say what staying power is because it's not a one-size-fits-all.
Absolutely.
It's almost like on a case-to-case basis. But in my years, in my capacity as a counselor, have I come to the conclusion that sometimes there is a need for some kind of break for people to get their act together. Yeah. I think that's a fact.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for your time, Amaka. Thank you so much.
Being here.
So basically, have a proper EI. Staying power should be on your mind, and that, of course, makes up the most of maturity.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much
for your time. Thank you so much for having me.
Always a pleasure.
Lovely to be here.
All right, and with that, we take a break now. When we get back, we have so much more for you on Wake Up Nigeria. Stay with us.